Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 8:15, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. He did the monster mash.
The monster mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
He did the mash.
It caught on in a flash.
He did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
Yes, it is. It's going to be Halloween very, very shortly, and all those ghosts and goblins are going to be running around the streets. So everyone beware and take care and make sure that no one gets hurt and no one gets in trouble. But good evening. It is yet another Monday Live. So happy to see all of you joining us. Steve, as always, Bud, you are certainly holding down the fort. And on that note of Halloween, Walt and Steve have put together two phenomenal edits for Halloween. So I want you to stay tuned for that, because he shared it with our legacy members and within our chat. Out of the park, hit it out of the park. So stay tuned for that. Of course, all the edits, if you do have one, please send it to our inbox. Go to our Facebook page, as always, and click message. And you can send a video, you can send a picture, something that you're proud of, something that you want to share. Perhaps it's something that you want to share with all of CFN. The inbox is the best way to do that. So I invite you guys and gals to send us some of your content. Love to share it. It's all about Canadian fishing and you Canadian anglers. So please help us help you get out the word that fishing in Canada is pretty okay. Tony, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you as well. Lloyd's in the house, as always. Pleasure to see you too as well, Lloyd. Steven's here. Richard Dunlop is here. Oh, James Shembry. Nice. Tammy. Atta girl. Congratulations on the Master Angler accomplishments, by the way, Tammy. Good for you. Awesome stuff. Yes, it is. It's interesting. You mentioned the hat, Lloyd. We'll get to that in a second. It is Monster Monday, and I wanted to share something that I saw on Instagram. We don't have a ton of announcements, so we're going to get to our featured guests. And unfortunately, Noel Vick, who was going to be joining us, is a little bit under the weather, and so we're going to be rescheduling that hopefully for next Monday. He'll be on Jim's segment. We're going to be talking about his book, which sounds really, really cool. I've dove into it a little bit and what's available online. So I invite you guys to stay tuned till next Monday. Hopefully Noel is 100%. And we'll be able to get some of that information to you, because it looks really fascinating. It looks like a topic that might take a little bit longer than the half hour, but we will wait and see. But because it is Monster Monday, I wanted to share this video, and I don't know how big it is. I don't know how much it weighs. All I know is it weighs enough, and you're going to find out. Stay tuned to the very end. Now it's also to share this size. And the reason I'm sharing it is because these fish are available to you Canadian anglers. And next Monster Monday, we're going to be featuring a good friend of mine who has a charter company out on the East Coast that is currently targeting this fish. That is, of course, the blue tuna, infamous blue and tuna. And they grow, as you can tell, bigger than humans. This gentleman that's down on the boat, you might want to look up in a few seconds, and he's going to have reason to very shortly. They're obviously trying to get out the wharf. As you see, he just moved. Probably a good thing that he did.
Oh, that did not happen.
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did.
OMG.
What happened?
Right.
Dropped it right in the water.
Oh no.
Yeah, so again,
That's not a good day.
Exactly how big that was,
dropped it in
big
the
enough,
water.
obviously, to break the crane that was lifting it.
Oh my god. They were carrying it, but then it dropped in
That
the
is
water.
incredible, absolutely incredible. But I'll tell you, those fish, and we're going to be featuring them. I'm going to say next Monday for sure, maybe subsequent Mondays as well, because as I said, my buddy who's a charter captain out east is on them in a big way and shared them with me today. So I'm going to be sharing them with you because I think they're just a fascinating fish. I can't get over the fact. Yes, we have whales, but they're mammals. Yes, we have sharks and they're fish. But the fact that a bluefin tuna grows to the size that it does, absolutely phenomenal. When it comes to swag, hats, and everything else, of course, I got to share this with you folks. Oh, I wanted to let everybody know all of the CFN Fish-Off prizes are out. So hopefully they will start showing up to all those very deserved and very patient winners. But all of the CFN Fish-Off prizes are out. Thanks so much to these folks up here, Shimano. Couldn't do it without you folks. So again, big shout out to Shimano. In terms of swag, if you're looking for a last-minute Christmas gift, maybe there's a follower that is just joining us. We'd love to see them in our colors. So I invite you folks to have a look, pay attention, and reach out to Richard Dunlop. There is more to come. We're working on them as we speak. But for right now, of course, this is what's available. And Richard Dunlop is the gentleman that you need to contact if, in fact, you want to wear and be proud of CFN as we are. Next announcement, of course, it is official. CFN retreat. This is going to be a special retreat, and I'll leave it at that. It is happening August 10th to the 16th. This is our 7th annual CFN retreat at Horwood Lake Lodge. It includes your meals, a boat rental, shared accommodations, fuel, bait, and a nightly fish fry. And it has been amazing that the owners of Horwood, both Mike, Warren, and Doris, and Jan, were able to keep it at the price of $875 for the week. Unfortunately, due to insurance and every darn thing that's going up in the world, they've had to increase it, and totally understandable why. But again, that is happening this year, and we want to get your butt booked in a bed. So please reach out to Warren and Doris. That's all the information that you need. We love to see up there. Something that I wanted to share, and of course, I'm a little light when it comes to content, so I will say our featured guests have stepped up in a big way because they have lots to talk about, and I appreciate that in a huge way because it helps me out. But, you know, we come here, we talk about fishing. It's a passion that all of us share. We all love it. If we're here, we love to fish. However, what's really interesting is we don't know a lot about your other passions. So we're going to be asking our featured segments, and I'd love actually for you folks to put it in the comment as we're playing the video. I got to enjoy my second favorite passion, and I will say I'm wearing the colors. It was a weekend of all weekends. I got to go back to a place that I had visited 31 years ago. I didn't have any kids, didn't have a wife at the time, and I went to what is known as the Big House on the grounds of Michigan University. And I will basically leave it there and explain how this pilgrimage back to Michigan truly was something that these eyes will not forget. I will take this to my grave. I got to enjoy it with my son, which of course makes it that much more special. And I will say, I think he enjoyed it just as much as I. So let's pay. And of course, I want to apologize. at the very end, he was so overwhelmed with how excited he was about the experience that he may have used a word that we don't typically use here on CFN Live or try not to. So if you have kids in the room, I apologize. It's one word. It's at the end of the video. So here we go.
Round 23. Round 23.
So it's a tradition that the fans follow the band right to the stadium. And I can talk about a pilgrimage. This is exactly what this is. Every Saturday they play it on.
Championship football.
If you don't know, your Michigan Friends, it is called the Big House. When you find out the attendance of this game, you'll understand why. Not too many seats open. This is a bit of a rivalry. Michigan playing Michigan State. So there were surprisingly just as many Michigan State people walking around campus as there were.
Let's go blue!
University.
Let's go blue!
This is definitely, the video doesn't do it justice, but when they finally score here,
Yes, sir! Yes, sir! Woohoo!
it's so cool to watch this. This especially, they turn the lights off in the stadium. Everybody's got their phone cameras on, and all I can say is the people at Samsung and Apple are
on the surprise side.
I apologize.
121st consecutive game with more than 100,000 fans in Michigan Stadium. Thank you for being part of the largest crowd watching a football game anywhere in America tonight.
You are right, Steve. So here's the last chance for Michigan, last chance for them to do anything. They throw it to the end zone, and all they had to do was get a first down. The quarterback gets his first down and slides.
That's the game.
And that is pretty much the game. So we just run out the clock. This is the last play. And as it says, the title, the rivalry lives on. This could have got extremely ugly. And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. But I will say there is a rivalry when it comes to college football, much like there is with pros. I think it's more so at the college level. That's the reason I absolutely love college football. But I will say this, it was something to remember. Of course, Michigan won 24-17.
Well, Jake, what do you think?
Great fucking game, buddy.
Yeah,
Big
baby.
W, Big W.
Go blue, baby. Go blue. Yes, sir.
So on that note, I would love to know, outside of fishing, which we all share a passion and love for, what is your passion? What is your passion outside of fishing? Some might say you don't have one. Some might say just more fishing. But I'd love to know what else people love to do outside of fishing. And we're going to ask our featured guests all that as we get to their segments, because I think it's really interesting to get to know what else people are interested in. I don't even know if a lot of you knew that I love college and, of course, Michigan football. But needless to say, I'd love to know what I'd hate to say. I hate to say it, but college ball in the States is bigger than it is. Bill, and you're not saying anything that's untrue. It is so true. So much so that even the hotel we were staying in, everything's decked out in Michigan. You go up to the desk to check in, and they've got like little cookies that are all like got yellow M's and blue M's on them. That it's decked out. And to think, you know, I was stunned to find out that the school only has 51,000 registered students in it that attend the university, yet they get 110 plus thousand people. And that is the 321st game in a row that they have surpassed 100,000 people. So to say football is big in the States is an understatement. But to say college football is bigger than CFL, Bill, it's not a stretch. You're 100% right. There you go. I like that. Mine's creating anything with my hands. Sonia, I would have to say that there might be a few people, including Big Jim, that would agree with that passion. As you know, we love Jim for all that he does here with CFN and CFN Live, but he's doing tying probably as I'm speaking right now behind the scenes. So yeah, that's really cool. Ed is adaptability. Yeah, sometime it just becomes a necessity with whatever cards you're dealt with. So yeah, 100% different. Yeah, different life moves. When things stops, try different. Yeah, 100%. How much of those tickets? Okay, so Tony, I didn't ask because I didn't want to know. I can't even begin to imagine, but I know I know I owe the kid big. So his birthday next year, I don't know what I'm going to have to spend, but I know it's going to be a kick in the teeth because those tickets are not cheap. So again, it was very, very special, and looking forward to perhaps maybe doing it again, but we'll see what happens with the finances, the world, and everything else that's going on in society. One thing I will say, a lot of people at work asked me, they said, you know, being from the States, were there a lot of signs, you know, about the election, the upcoming election? Surprisingly, no. In the state of Michigan, as you're driving around the highways, you wouldn't even know an election is going on. You don't see like support Trump bumper stickers. You don't see anything about Kamala. And it's interesting because I've heard her name pronounced 3 different ways when we were down there: Kamala, and Camilla. And I don't know which one's right. And I don't really care at this stage, to be honest with you. But it was interesting. You wouldn't even know there's an election going on. You know, you very rarely see the ads on TV. I don't know if it's just the state of Michigan. Maybe, you know, they're protesting, but it is what it is. But yeah, somebody did ask me that today. So you didn't see a lot of that. Bill, hunting is my other passion. Yeah, I give 200% to, yeah, 100%. Love that stuff. Yeah, Richard, you love your hunting as well. Coors Light or yeah, anything outdoors. Tammy, and this is the thing. Sometimes we just share a passion within a passion. So being in the outdoors, doesn't matter if we're going for a walk, maybe we're tossing a line, maybe we are hunting an animal, looking at tracks, bird watching, you know, just being in the outdoors encompasses so much. So you're 100% right. It doesn't necessarily have to be fishing, but just getting outside is truly something we cherish. We got George here. I get paid to work on fish, and my other passion is fishing. So win-win in my book. Sounds like you got it down pat, George. Tip of the hat to George. You got it figured out, buddy. Good for you. I truly am inspired and honored to have you here each Monday as you bring a wealth of information. Tony is into hunting, is my other passion, because I would go hunting with my cool. Golf is next. Golf. I could see that. NASCAR, maybe horse riding. I don't know. As I said, maybe you just like to watch movies. I love just sitting around a nice campfire, storytelling. Absolutely, 100%. And one thing that I will say we do a lot of, whether we like to hear them or not, is that our CFN and OFC Nation retreats, there is a lot of storytelling. I don't necessarily know if it's all true. And really, I don't care. But it's fun to listen to other people's stories and other people's takes on what's going on in the world and how they see and view some of the issues that we are presented each and every day. Hunting is rewarding. It's one. Yeah, absolutely. 100%, Bill. And it is a passion that I hope continues. I will say we are going to be talking about a few topics tonight that are showing signs of having a negative effect on our fishing. And I'm looking forward to Lawrence and Jay, I would say, giving us a little bit more background information on these topics. It's stuff that we already know, but we've got it down to a bit of a detailed science now in terms of how bad of an influence it is. And Richard, I want to thank you for sharing that video on microplastics. We're going to be showing that later on in Lauren's segment. But without further ado, let's get right to Jim so we can find out what his favorite pastime is, what he loves to do outside of fishing, right after his opening promo.
When he was born, he tried to reel in the umbilical cord. Bass named him as their personal best. His power pole came with a stripper. Forward-facing sonar uses him to find fish. Chuck Norris is his co-angler. He is the most interesting fisherman in the world. Stay fishing, my friends.
Well, good evening, Jim. How you doing, my son?
Good. Hey, I figured out why I didn't catch any fish that day we went out here hardly.
Why?
Because we didn't bring the net. I'm turning this back on you because you said I was going to be, you were going to be the net man, but you didn't bring the net, so I didn't have to catch any fish.
Well, this is true. You know what? I'll take the blame. I got big shoulders.
I dreamt that.
It just means we got to do it again. That's all. I got to completely redeem myself, Jim. So please give me that honor.
100 practice scoops every night.
Oh, Richard. Yeah, this is a story. You got to come up to a CFN retreat to hear it, because I don't think there's enough time in a day to listen to this turkey story of Richard's. You'll bust a gut every time I hear it. I've probably heard it 2 times now. It is one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. So yeah, you have to come to a CFN retreat to hear it. But Jim, as the most fascinating angler in the world, outside of angling, what is your greatest passion?
Well, when I was younger, it used to be the Swedish lingerie team. But since I'm broke now, it's fighter planes.
That is true. You do have a fascination, yeah, and you do share a few videos of those. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I have an absolute fascination. I think I have a touch of warmonger in me or something. I don't know, but like if you came to me here tonight and said to me, "Look, we'll get you up tomorrow in an F-15, and we will fly you 500 feet off the ground at 800 miles an hour, and you can never go fishing again," I would have a sale of fishing stuff.
Really?
That's how strong that's in my body. Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I can't share the same when it comes to college football because I love both of them equally. That would be a toss-up for me. So that is huge, Jim. For you to say that's
yeah, I said that to a few people and it shocks them. I'll tell you, I said when you talk about the turkey story, I have a story. I won't even begin to tell it, but I told it in the van many, many years ago with Tammy driving the van, myself in the front seat, and 4 guys from the the Argos, the year they won the Grey Cup, in the back. And I told this story. And to this day, she still, if she thinks about the looks on their faces of what I was talking about and where I went with it, the 4 of them were in the back. I didn't think they were breathing. They couldn't believe I'll tell it to you sometime.
Oh, you can't tell it online? Okay, I was going to say.
No. I was
going to go get a bag of popcorn.
I'd be going downstairs and I'd have to save a seat for you.
Oh,
it
wow.
was just for listening, for telling. I've told it a few times. I told it at a Shimano Pro Staff meeting in Montreal once. And the place went wild. It was back when they were in Montreal and they used to have it in the back of the warehouse. They'd move a bunch of the stuff out of the way and they'd have a big Christmas party and whatever else. That's the night that I I showed Tom Brook how to tear a telephone book in half, and I did it.
Wow. I will say, having heard Richard's story a couple times now, if
I got to
it
hear
is,
it now.
oh, Jim, it is literally the funniest.
Is it a joke or a story?
No, it's a story. It actually happened to him. And I think the funniest thing is after it was all over and how it all came to be was he shared it because they were looking for segments, content, interesting stories that could be shared. I don't know if it was in a hunter and like the Hunter and Angler or Angler and Hunter magazine, or if it was on another big publication, but it got shared, and the backlash that he got from those PETA people. Anyway, I won't go any further, but it is literally the funniest thing I've heard when it comes to hunting.
Best thing I ever saw was a guy I knew. He was an RCMP guy, poke and dagger type guy, for real.
Yeah.
And he was up in northern Quebec hunting, and he shot a moose. Always wanted to shoot a moose. Said he didn't know if he could do it. And I said to him, I couldn't do that. I couldn't shoot a moose. I couldn't do it. I'll go fight with the bikers, but I ain't shooting a moose. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that kind of thing. And anyways, he went to do it. He did it. And they had this little piece of movie. You know, this is before phones and everything. This is many, many years ago. First issue of Just Fishing I did. He said to me, do me a favor, sit one of those out at your back door. And about 4 days later, he sent me a satellite image of it when they got a satellite that was in where they could take a picture. And he sent me a picture of the paper at the back door, sitting on the back door. I put it down. It was an old piece of glass we had from a window, and I put it over top of it so it couldn't blow away or get wet or anything. And he got the picture. There's a little sheen in one corner, but that was taken from way up. So anyways, he's in northern Quebec. He shoots the moose. It's a giant. First one ever. An absolute giant moose. Great big thing. I think it weighed like 1,475 pounds or something. It was just like a monster. He shoots it. It's down. They go over. I mean, it went down on it when he shot it. He just dropped it, and he went over, puts his rifle on the antler. I was going to say the horn, the antler. You can tell I don't hunt. Puts it on the antler, and he's standing against it, getting his picture taken, doing the shots and everything, And the moose gets up and runs off with his $1,800 gun on his antler.
Whoa!
They got a movie of it, yeah. And he never shot it. He knocked it out. They think it hit the antler somewhere close to the head, and the shock of the bullet hitting it dropped him. Yeah, hey, I like that idea. Moose roast, yeah, no.
Oh,
but
that's hilarious. Speaking of turkeys, Sonia, you brought up something that actually came up in my timeline. That is like so. As funny as that is, the story that Richard has is just as funny. Trust me, it is just as funny. So, as I said, love to see you up at a CFN retreat so Richard could tell the story again. No one, and I mean no one on this planet, could do it justice like Richard does. So, anyway,
that'd be cool. I like to hear that one.
It is truly, truly epic. So, buddy, we were going to meet with Noel Vic tonight.
Noel.
Oh, sorry, Noel.
No, just so you know, because
it's funny I say that because every time I typed in his name, those two apostrophes came over the E, and I'm like, no,
that might be a Canadian thing, Maybe I don't know. Like Noel Gagnon's is Noel. They call him Noel, right?
Yeah.
Well, John Noel from Hummingbird and that, His last name is Noel. It's but Noel.
George is asking, do we need to start a GoFundMe page for Jim, or can he sell all his idiots?
Can all go at once, George. Get the mortgage on your house drawn up, and you can come pick her up. You better have the F-15 at the door.
So his book, I mean, we're hopefully he's going to be okay, and we'll be able to talk to him next Monday.
Yeah.
But the significance of the book, Jim, give us a little bit of background.
I'm just waiting for it to come. He mailed me one.
Okay.
I look at it and that. We hadn't talked about it, but when I saw the press release and then I saw him at a place in the States and he's doing a book signing in a bookstore. And there's all these people in the lineup and he's signing the books and everybody. It's just I just thought it was really, really cool.
So based on what I saw, it is really cool. And what I love about it, and I think I will make a point of buying a bunch of copies, for some of those young anglers, and you talk about some of the younger part of our community that want to know a lot more about fish, and whether they talk to you, Jim, or they talk to me or anybody else for that matter, they want to know about fishing. They just thrive. They're all sponges. And this book is dedicated and written for kids that truly want to take the next step in learning about fishing and the fish themselves. So again, if you can't wait and you want a sneak peek, Steve has shared a link here for NoelVicBooks.com. This will be, hopefully, as I said, next week. We will be talking about this book. So if you do have a young angler that wants to listen in and know a little bit more about this potentially could be something that is purchased and given as a present to a lot of young CFN.
Cool. Yeah, I go back a long way with Noel. I met him, remember many, many years ago, Ontario Outdoors did an ice fishing show at the International Center. That's where I met him. That's when Dennis Clark owned Clam.
Mm-hmm.
We had Dave Gens there, and I had already met Dave before that, but I'd been I'd spent a couple of winters ice fishing with them, and they came in and they did that, and it was like the interest in ice fishing back then really had not clicked. It had not clicked. Like, like I was out fishing with Dave the winter before, and we're at these places, and he says to me, "Doesn't anybody come here to ice fish?" Like he couldn't believe there was nobody at the lakes, and those are the places that you go now that have, I hate to say it, but they've probably been hurt a bit by ice fishing.
Yeah.
They've probably been hurt a bit, and that all goes back to, when they put me in the Hall of Fame there last year, the year before, and I got the phone call from Dave Gens a couple of days after to congratulate me, and we were talking about it and all the time that we spent ice fishing and teaching people, and he was so happy that this is what I had done with my life and whatever else, and he was just so complimentary to me as a friend. It was great. And then he said to me, he said, "It's a shame though." He said, "I spent my whole life teaching people how to catch fish, and now," he said, "I have to spend the rest of my life begging them to put them back in the water." Imagine a guy like Dave Gens feeling like that.
And I think he would, those same sentiments would be shared by a guy like Gord Pizer.
I had a chat with a guy down here a couple of weeks ago. He caught a bowfin off the dock over here.
Yeah.
That was about 3 pounds or so, 3 or 4 pounds. And he's got the fish, and he yells across to me, "Hey, do you know what kind of fish this is?" And I said, "It's a bowfin." He said, "Should I kill it?" I said, "No, you should take the hook out and put it back in the lake." So he was scared to touch it. He said, "Oh, my friend told me they'll take your finger off." I said, "Well, basically, there's no fish that I know of in fresh water that's going to take your finger off. I'm sure if you set things up right, a giant muskie could, if you really tried to help him or something,
Yeah.
But as for taking your finger off, a 3-pound bowfin is not biting your finger off, But people have this fear about those fish. It's been bred into them. I think I told you the time when Glenn Carr fell out of the boat with me.
Yeah.
He went in to get another reason. I yelled, "Well, he's gonna get your hand." He fell up trying to stop, And then he's in a water restaurant. I'm yelling, "Look out, he's behind you."
I will say this, Jim, you're 100% right. I don't think there's anything that swims in fresh water with fins that I would be near as frightful of than a snapping turtle. Those I have actually seen take chunks out of canoe paddles. They have a vicious bite. Those.
I told you about the one I had with the kid with trying to feed the peanut butter sandwich to it.
Yeah.
And I held that up. I held it up in the air. It wasn't a particularly big one. Probably like maybe 18 inches from end to end, which is like, it's big. It's an adult, and I was holding it up by the stick like this, and you could hear it crunch in the wood.
Jeez. Yeah.
So you don't need that attached to your leg or finger.
No.
And then they've got that one with that guy on Facebook that has that big one. It's like 70 pounds or something. It's an alligator snapper, the real nasty ones.
And he's holding it up with all his might. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. And there's another guy who has one that he's buddies with. He feeds it. He holds the food out and it goes.
Oh, thanks. No.
I'm not even taking a chance with that.
No. And there are some videos, of course, that are making their rounds.
They all work good.
Yeah. Folks that I've seen in plexiglass boats that are in the middle of shark infested waters, that the great white breaches and smashes the plexiglass boat that the guy's in. Cages.
I
Cage
moved
net.
with a plexiglass boat once.
Okay. I'm not that old, Jim. Yeah, eels. Yeah, eels are not. It's funny you mentioned this, Steve. When I was diving for the first time out in the Caymans, first time I've ever deep sea dived or dove, that was my biggest fear. It wasn't sharks. It was that you were getting so close to the coral that one of those moray eels was going to come out.
Oh, they're nasty suckers.
Yeah, that was so great point there, Steve. I would be more fearful of them.
I've got a lot of those. The best one was ever my buddy Terry. When the one I said, come here, and I grabbed it, and it went around my arm. I got rid of that thing so fast.
Yes.
His rod and reel, took the rod and reel right out of the sand because the bail was closed. I threw it that creeped me out.
George brings up a great point. You are 100% right, George. And this is probably why I didn't bring the net, Jim, because I was fearful that if you did hook a heifer, that I wouldn't net it properly and I would be swimming back to the dock.
with me behind you, beating the big drum like in the Egyptian movies.
Exactly.
Stroke.
Oh, too funny. But yeah, needless to say, as I said, it's interesting to be able to, like, again, like we talk fishing, we're so in tune to fishing, and sometimes we just get away from some of our other loves and passions.
Yep.
Some folks just like hanging out with their friends, some like hanging out with their family, but nonetheless, there are so many, I don't know, so many diversions, if you will.
Well, they really because of social media, Facebook, it really rekindled my interest too.
Yeah.
Because there's so many pages you can go to. A couple of times I've got guys from the F-16 demo team, the Viper, to engage me on Facebook.
Wow.
In messages, eh? Yeah. Wow. It was really, really cool. But I've always had speed fascinates me. Speed fascinates me big time. I was never a speedster when I was young. Like, I wasn't out driving around with it pinned to the floor, or I wasn't that. But the idea of being in a plane like that, and just you watch those videos where they go by the aircraft carriers and they're breaking the sound barrier, and you see the white around them, from the vapor. That just drives me nuts. I get goosebumps.
Wow.
I would do that. And I'm getting excited now. I'm going to be on the phone today. Hey, do you have a fighter plane? Take me for a ride.
Speaking of getting excited, our good friend Bobble from Shimano caught himself a heck of a beautiful largemouth this past week.
To show you.
Yeah, what a fish it was. And judging by the smile on his face, you could tell. Yeah, you think he's excited about that fish? You're darn right he's excited about that fish. What a beaut. Well done, Bobble. But 'tis the season, Jim. I know we talk about it at great length, and we have to somehow correct people who think that the fish only put on the feed bags in the fall. But at the end of the day, it seems like, to me anyway, some of the bigger fish are caught this time of year. Would you agree, Jim, or no?
Yeah, people really target them. I think the worst time for big fish is the spring because people poach them.
Yeah.
They catch them when they're spawning. That's something that goes on. You see a lot of pictures. I've often challenged people on that, because then they say, no, the season was open. Oh, really? Because that's amazing, because those trees behind you, they don't have any leaves. So that they caught that fish, early in the spring when they go up, eh? Especially when they're egg laden, they're a lot heavier. I'm not sure the exact thing, but no, I mean, fish feed all year. They, like we've talked about this, they're done making babies. They open their mouth and they start swimming. And I mean, how many tournament pictures did you see guys with this year holding up a smallmouth going, look at the gut on that? And then September comes and they say, well, they're putting on the feed bag. If the fish got any fatter, it'd blow up, But
it's so
I'm sure that they do have, some kind of a last minute thing.
Yeah.
To feed, but they get, this is when you can really whack them when they get bunched up. They get
Well, it's
pike.
interesting. It's so interesting you mentioned this because I was going through Instagram for whatever reason. I think it was at lunch, and I think I typed in Canadian fishing just to see if there was any new news or something that was epic that we needed to share.
Mhm.
And I was just blown away at the size of fish that are being caught right now from all over the country, not just here in Ontario, all over the country, whether it's out in Saskatchewan, BC, as we saw with that bluefin tuna out east. 'Tis the season. And
Well,
hopefully,
people really get out and target them now too. The good fishermen,
yes,
the guys that know they're out there. It's a, they definitely get at them. And there's seasonal stuff too. Like, you've heard me talk about I can fish here all summer and catch 1-2 pound pike. And as soon as the weeds are gone and the water starts to cool, fish that are in that, 5 to 7 pound class, they can sometimes be numerous. And look at the day we were out, the number of decent pike. I mean, we're not talking up north. We're talking a lake that's lined with cottages, an hour from 2 major cities. It's fished to hell, and all these nice pike, boom, out of the blue, out they come. Not a mark on them, never been caught, never been touched, and it just happens. They have times of the year that they just seem to be. I don't know. I would say that things get perfect for them. Their water temperature, everything else. Plus, they're bunched up.
that is true too. And they are obviously competing for food. Yeah, I
Steve, you
think.
can't say that.
Yeah, I'm so glad it wasn't me that said it. But yeah, they belly up. I don't know if you're talking about us, Steve, or the fish when you talk about the buffet. Richard is asking an interesting question, and it'd be hard to determine if live scope has had that quick of an impact on big fish. No, I'd agree.
Numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
So the numbers are there. If you wade through enough, you're going to get bigger ones.
Oh, Erica brings up a great point. I find people fish less now too, because it's too cold. So perhaps with less anglers, there's less pressure. That might have something to do with it. That's interesting comment. Yeah.
But I know in the fall that when I used to do all the largemouth fishing, like when I was at it, 4 days a week or something like that, I would target certain areas and I would just keep going to them and not spots that I knew about even. There's spots that I'd go to and catch the odd fish throughout the year. And, it looked good to me. It just had everything that they needed. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the water temperature gets down to the low 50s and starts to drop into the 40s. And then it's just game on. But you have to fish so slowly.
Yes.
You have to, things just change about what you have to do to catch those fish. And if you continue doing, like I saw a guy out here the other day, standing over here, he's chucking a frog at the shore. I mean, I don't know. The water temperature here in the backs now is like 51, 52, and probably going to be lower because we had pretty solid frost. But look at this week. The highs are 20.
I know.
I was looking at the long range forecast. There's some 12s, 14s, 15s coming up here in the middle of November.
It's hanging on. I'll tell you, summer is hanging on. It doesn't want to let go.
Exactly the same as it was last year.
I was just going to say it's no different than it was last year.
And I see it in the memories too.
Yep.
Comes up. It's same old thing. It's there's certain things out there that don't change. But yeah, they talked. I was looking on the weather. One of the weather things the other day. I watched this big extensive thing. It was like 10 minutes long, and they were talking about the currents there, the Nina and what is it, La and El or whatever the hell they are.
How
That it had started to change, but it hadn't really followed through. And now they're saying that out west could be pretty chilly again. But the other thing is too, when they start talking about averages, if I'm not mistaken, weather averages, it was either 20 or 30 years that they take them from. So if you were to take our averages of temperature from the last 30 years,
yeah,
or the last 20, it's huge. The average temperature in the last 20 years is a lot higher than it would have been over the last 30, and vice versa with the cold. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't get that extreme cold. First winter we moved here, we had, I think it was 8 or 9 days where it was like minus 30 or more or lower.
Mm-hmm.
And last year we did not have a minus 30 here.
Oh, wow.
We had some 26s, 28s, and it was only a few. The snow was around half the winter. So
And of course, with the magazine out, a lot of folks are getting their knowledge back when it comes to some of the tips, tricks, and techniques a lot of your writers share. And I invite everyone to go to justfishing.ca to get your copy. It's online, it's available, it's free, and Jim would appreciate you folks signing up for it and having a look.
Give it a share. You don't have to sign up for it; just get it now. We stopped doing that.
Okay.
It's just not worth it. There's nothing to be gained for either side. So we leave it there. We just have a thing, and then we had people sending us rude notes. I don't fish anymore. Why do you send me this? Well, because you signed up for it.
Oh wow.
Tammy dealt with a couple of those.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Some people.
The article that Dave put together on Great Lakes smallmouth has been by far the most popular one.
That's cool.
So that's
very good.
Cool.
Jim, as always, buddy, our time flies. Can't thank you enough for all that you do for us, and I look forward to speaking with you next week to Noel, Vic, in regards to this book that I think will be something that kids geared towards kids, which I think is something that is much overdue, long overdue, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you as well as all of CFN next week, buddy. You take care of yourself, my friend, and stay classy. We got Lawrence coming up right after this word.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
There he is, the one and only Lawrence Gunther. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing well, buddy. I'm doing well. That trip you took with your son sounds amazing.
It was, and the video, it doesn't do it justice, because even he, and sometimes our younger generations, it's hard to impress. He is slowly becoming a lover of college football like I loved his NFL, and I think it had more to do with the fact that he was making money on it betting. But the history, the tradition, it's something that unless you've been following it for a while, you don't really get that sense of appreciation. And I will say that boy is hooked like I am, and both of us are looking forward to getting back. But I'll tell you, it's something to I've said this before, Lawrence, I'm sure you have tons of accomplishments. Jim has lots of trophies. Jay, the same, no different. But when you're able to see your kid experience something, be awarded for something, get acknowledged for their abilities, nothing that we've ever done in our life will ever come close or compare to watching your child enjoy and succeed in something. So again, it was more awesome just to watch his reaction as it was to partake in it. But I have to, with that as a segue, what is your passion outside of fishing, outside of everything you do for Blue Canada and Bluefish Radio? What is your passion outside of angling?
Well, I would like to say it's football, because I've always enjoyed football out of all the sports. I like baseball too, but football is probably, and especially Canadian football. And maybe I played a little bit of high school football in Georgetown, Ontario, and with the Rebels, and I knew nothing about football, but I was 6'3". I was in pretty good shape. Having spent summers worked on farms, I could see enough, not to catch a ball, but to catch people. And they put me on as a defensive end. And my whole job was just to get the quarterback, right? And it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. And it got me hooked. And even now, like if I listen to, Canadian football games on television. And if they have the description going, for the blind, that's fantastic. If not, I still listen because, the announcers do such a good job anyways. And Canadian football is just so much fun. American football, it's more of a visual thing because it's like machines, right? They're just banging against each other. It's just massive machines on the field. But Canadian football is everyone's flying around.
Here was my take, and this is, I think this opened the eyes to my son.
Yeah.
As I said, Jake, is as amazing as this experience is. This is going on in so many other states, so many other cities. The logistics, the amount of people that it encompasses and involves, the logistics of setting these games up, making sure that you have security, making sure people, because let's face it, and now that they're serving beer at these events, you have that element that you got to deal with as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed. And I think, nothing to take away from our Canadian counterparts, but, you look at the work that goes into a Grey Cup event and, the magnitude of people that it encompasses. And that is that's our biggest football event in Canada. It probably equals that of a typical Saturday game down in the States at a college. And in fact, I hate to say it, but there's some high school events down in Texas that would rival the magnitude of a Grey Cup. So,
when
it comes to sports, I've said it before, no one does it better than the Americans. College
football is more popular than I think than the NFL, right? I mean, it's just because you have all these rivalries and all these allegiances. I mean, my daughter just started at Ottawa U. I rent out a room here to an Ottawa GG football player. He plays offensive end and on some specialty teams. And it's just a great guy. We just live a few blocks from the university. And so my daughter went to that, the Carleton University of Ottawa University Panda games. It's a rivalry. They play each other, and it's as big as the Grey Cup. It's just massively important to these two teams to dominate the other one, right? It's hilarious, absolutely hilarious.
Steve says, "Good Lord, Lawrence, you have more stories than Walt Disney." I would have to agree. Manny asked a question. Sorry, Manny, I missed it before we ended with Jim. We will certainly try and remember to ask Jim next week. What was the first fish you caught? Do you remember?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been a brook trout through the ice of the pond that my dad had installed on this little old piece of crappy property that he purchased when I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old. And then he put a pond in, then he stocked it. And then we wanted to see how they were doing in the winter. We chopped a hole through the ice. We dropped a little hook through, and boom! As soon as it went through the ice, there was fish beating on it. So we knew there was a lot of fish down there, hungry brook trout, and they stayed there. It was so exciting that there was fish just living underneath the ice, right below our feet. And I was maybe 5 years old, and I was captured at that moment. But to finish your question, I would say my other big love is boats. I love boats. Boats of all shapes and sizes, for all purposes, and all methods of propulsion. It doesn't matter. I love them all. I want to have them all. I want to live on a boat someday. When I was 18, I wanted to become a mariner, right? I wanted to work on the ships, and I actually got an application. The Seafarers Training Institute is in Kingston, and I wanted to go to the Seafarers Training Institute. I remember taking my application down to my doctor. I had to get him to fill out the physical health part, and it was not long after. It wasn't long after the Ranger oil Ranger off the coast of Newfoundland sank.
Yeah,
and my doctor said, "So Lawrence, how much can you see?" And I just pointing things out in his office, and he writes on there, "So I'm going to put down here, you can see shadows." And that was the end of my seafarer dream.
Oh, that's too bad. That's a sad story, but I'll tell you what has come out of it is truly inspiring. And I will have to say, Manny, to answer your question real quick, definitely a rock bass. I did share, and I will go back to sharing that in upcoming days where it all started, because I did go back this summer with my mom and visited the lake that it all started. Where this all started, the actual dock that I stood on I was able to revisit some 20 odd years, or oh my God, more than that, probably 20, 30 years, maybe even longer. So it was really cool to get back to where it all started. But for me, of course, the passion for walleye, just to share the story very, very quickly to you, Manny, and anybody else who hasn't heard it. And if you have, I apologize. I was reeling in what I thought was yet another rock bass. And I will never forget this till the day I die. My father, who didn't get excited about much, didn't get dramatic about too much. I'm sure I certainly tried his patience when I was young, but I never really got to see him that excited. But he stood up in the boat as I was reeling in what I thought was another rock bass and said, "That is a pickerel. Don't lose it." Eyes wide open. I had no idea what a pickerel was outside of the fact that I'm staring up at 5, 6 years old. My old man, who I'm now afraid, like, is he going to jump in after this fish? Like, what is he about to do? He was all excited and got it in the boat, and he's like, woohoo, screaming, and I didn't know what the heck it was, but we took it home and he filleted it and cooked it up. And I will say that is where my passion for walleye started and continued. The flame was lit at that point. So
I love that story, because what really brings it home too is the fact that your father celebrated your experience in nature with the fish, right? And the fish you ate that fish and you became part of that fish, and that fish became part of you. And it sealed the deal, man. And I remember my dad, we would catch those trout and we'd bring them back to the cottage and clean them and cook. He would cook them and he loved it. And we'd eat them with him. And they were just so, he enjoyed it so much. You couldn't help but enjoy it, And for small kids, like, it's not many small kids like eating fish out of a frying pan, right? It's a bit of a, you get a taste for that as you get older, but you're thinking all the bones and everything.
Well, I will say this, my dad had caught a couple bass, and we had fried those up or cooked them. I'm not sure exactly how he prepared them. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't that fond of it as a young kid because it had that gamey bass taste.
Yeah.
Years after I found out how to take that gamey taste out of the meat, and I would probably eat it just as I would walleye now that I've learned that. But in the very beginning, I wasn't very fond of fish. No. And I knew my love for fish was a little deeper than most people my age, where I wanted to take everything home. I wanted to put everything in an aquarium because I wanted to just watch it, right? I think we all were at that age where we had an aquarium and just loved to watch fish do their thing. My grandfather said, "Well, what are we doing with these rock bass? What are we doing with these bass that are in the bucket?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Well, are we going to eat them?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess we could cook them up, but I don't really want to see you kill them." So as a young lad, I had a love for animals, and as much as I love to eat them as a young person, I did not want to see them cut up or treated badly. So again, that is part of the ethics too, that I was taught at a very young age to look after fish. And I think it's important because this is a great segue of what's going on now. And I know Richard shared a video link, a YouTube link that is put on by the Water Brothers. And unfortunately, it does not paint a very good picture for our Great Lakes. I think folks that know what's going on in our oceans, Lawrence, there are two now, not just one, but there are two islands of plastic that are floating and churning around in our oceans. As bad as it is, because the media has done a great job explaining it, showing us visuals, showing us the extent of that island of plastic, we have a bigger problem in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, even balloons, even just kids' balloons, it's a huge problem just in balloons. Yeah. We got some problems for sure. And and there's another one, and those Water Brothers, they've just do great work. And there's another crew I met at a research symposium this past week in Cornwall. It was put on by the St. Lawrence River Institute for Environmental Science. And I was invited to give a present down there and have a table. And let me just get my notes here. Hang on. All too clear. It's a new TV series that started on TVO on Saturday. There's 3 parts to the series. You can also watch it on YouTube. And this is a Canadian crew. They bought themselves a $5,000 remote operated vehicle, underwater vehicle, and now they bought a $175,000 remote underwater vehicle. And they've been sending this down into the Great Lakes, into the depths of the Great Lakes, and filming fish in the Great Lakes and what it's like down there and what the fish are dealing with. And they've, you would think like filming fish underwater, right? It's hard to sell that to anyone, to show that. But these people have really captured the imagination and revealed stuff. So they were showing clips from the videos, and there was a room full of scientists that study fish for a living. And they were going, oh my, did not know it was like that. What they were showing underwater in our Great Lakes was astounding the scientists. So it's a must watch. It's a must watch. It's All Too Clear on YouTube and TVO, a Canadian crew. And I think they're Canadian. That could be wrong. They could be American. I'm not sure. I didn't ask, but just doing fantastic work. And we gotta get the handle on what's going on with the Great Lakes. There's no doubt about it, man.
And with that, I want to share this video. And folks, please listen to the message. Listen to what they tell us, because I will say this: we need to change our habits, because this is alarming.
No place left on Earth that is free from our plastic waste. In 2012, we took a trip to the middle of the Pacific Garbage Patch to see just how bad the plastic pollution problem has become. That journey showed us how our trash never goes away, and as it slowly breaks down into smaller pieces, it's eaten by almost everything, moving through the food web and eventually into our own bodies.
We wanted to know what more can be done to solve this massive challenge, and how freshwater ecosystems in our own backyards, like the Great Lakes, are being affected.
And I can tell you that in the middle of the Pacific Garbage Patch, where there's a lot of plastic in the middle of the ocean, we found plastic in about 1 in 10 fish. And maybe we found a couple pieces in each fish. The first study we did in the Great Lakes, she found microplastics in almost every single fish.
At the University of Toronto, Dr. Chelsea Rockman and her students are working to understand the sources, fate, and ecological implications of plastic pollution in aquatic environments. One of their most recent studies investigated the amount of microplastics found in the bodies of Great Lakes fish. In the 381 fish they sampled, they found over 17,000 plastic particles.
And the amount of plastic in the fish digestive tracts was really high as well. So typically where you see something ranging from like 0 to maybe 30 particles was pretty common in marine studies. I saw an average of around 60 particles per fish, but the maximum was almost 1,000 particles in a single fish.
So the concentrations are higher by being less dilute in smaller bodies of water and hugged right up close to people, who is the source of that pollution. Microplastics are widely ingested by every level of the food web and by all kinds of different types of animals, right? So mussels and invertebrates that suspension feed or filter feed to like your top predators that are getting it from eating their prey.
Sobering, isn't it?
No, yeah. My daughter tells me she's studying biology, as I mentioned, and she said on average we're eating a credit card worth of plastic every year. And this is not just going through our digestive system, and it's not just, we're not passing it, right? Like in the fish too, when they say they find it in the fish, they're finding it in the muscular tissue as well.
Yeah.
And I talked to a scientist at Vancouver Aquarium who was hired to research microplastics, and this is 9 years ago, and she said the tiny little microplastic pieces make little homes for chemicals. And then when you have more than one different types of chemicals that are absorbed in these little plastic sponges, these little microplastic particles, they have chemical reactions, and they can become toxic in themselves. And so it's not just like a piece of plastic that we're wrapping our sandwich in or Tupperware. In the ocean, in the environment, they can become toxic in their own sense.
And I think the shame is, again, we're speaking to the wrong people. You know, I'm not looking at Joe. I'm not looking at Eve. I'm not looking at Randy. I'm not looking at Sonia. I'm not looking at anybody, Erica, anybody that's watching here tonight, and citing them as the issue that there's plastic in our fresh water. Folks who know better than to throw it on the ground, throw it on the road, or just throw it anywhere else but where it should go. The unfortunate thing is, and I hate to bring it back to where I live here in Brampton, but the absolute filth that I experience each and every day, driving to work, driving home from work, whether it's in a parking lot. I'll give you an example, and I'll get on a bit of a rant. I was working on call one weekend, and I decided to stop in at McDonald's for a breakfast sandwich on my way to the office. This was on a Saturday morning. And I get to a parking lot that honestly is a 5-minute drive from my house. I get there, and all of a sudden, just as I'm in the line about to order my sandwich, I get a page. I have to leave to respond to the call. Get my sandwich. As I'm driving out, I see this one, doesn't matter, but he was a black man out there with a bag and a sweeper. And he was doing his very best to clean up what was just a monstrous pile of garbage all over this shopping mall parking lot. There are 4 or 5 cop cars over in the corner. They've got 3 cars blocked in. Obviously, they were doing something illegal. It doesn't matter, but I saw liquor bottles on the roofs. They were new Canadians, I will say, for being politically correct. They were new Canadians. And as I passed the black man that was cleaning up the parking lot, I said, "Dude, what happened here? Was there a festival?" He says, "It happens here every Friday and Saturday night. These kids congregate. They have nowhere else to go, so they come to these parking lots. They play music. They do burnouts. They do all kinds of stuff. But this filth is something that happens every weekend." And if I didn't have to run off to a call, I would have gotten out of my truck and helped this poor guy, because it was like that little ant up the hill song, like, whoops, there goes another one. And I'm thinking, all of this mess this poor guy has to clean up every single weekend. Those are the people that we need to get this message that this is not a garbage can. This is a country that holds our natural resources at a very high regard. And we as old Canadians need to do a better job of enforcing the message and sending the message, because it's just, when I see it, it just drives me crazy. I understand, being a kid, you don't know any better. You're going to do dumb things, but I see it time and time again. You're sitting at a stoplight, and all of a sudden, like a Dairy Queen or a Tim Hortons cup comes flying out the window, and it's like, you couldn't wait to wherever it was that you're going. You couldn't wait to throw it out there. You had to throw it out here. Don't get it. Just don't get it.
Well, the plastic water bottle, on the water, and people shore fishing, people in boats, these things blow off the boats. They get thrown overboard. They end up on the shore, in the waves, and the waves grind them up pretty quick, right? It doesn't take long for the wave action to grind up a plastic water bottle and create microplastics. So there's a million ways that it's happening, but it is happening. And recycling plastic, it's in the big picture, it's a joke, right? We're separating, we're sorting, we're blue binning, we're doing all that, but it's a token gesture to the problem. We're creating plastics, exponentially faster than we're taking them out of the environment.
And there's a real feel-good story and segment at the end of the video where it talks about an initiative that's going on in BC, where they've taken it to the next level. And of course, everything that is good for the environment costs money. I don't think there's anything really that we do that doesn't. But they have it figured out in BC, and I think I'm hoping anyway, more provinces adopt that initiative and that process, so that we can do a better job of not cleaning up the mess, but at least addressing it. And I don't think we're doing a very good job right now when it comes to
plastic's never going to leave our life, right? We're always going to be plastic. I mean, look at the amount of plastic that goes into a car, just in the, when you're inside the car. And there's going to be a role for plastic. And in itself, it captures carbon as long as you don't burn it. it's a carbon capture. You can bury it. It's going to, the plastic and the carbon it contains is going to stay underground forever. It's not going to get in the atmosphere. So it's not contributing necessarily to climate change, but it's all the other plastic, the disposable plastic, that, the one-use plastic, right? That's the stuff we got to sort of work away from. All that packaging, the water bottles, the bags, just, the cups, the containers. There's just so much of it that we're just tossing and tossing and tossing and tossing. And it's just, floating around, flying around and getting into our ecosystems. We got to relook at this. Recycling, all that stuff, it's not the answer. It's never going to be the answer. We're just never going to get on top of it because we're just manufacturing way too much.
So Joe asked if it, and you're 100% right, Lawrence. Joe's asking an interesting question, and I think I know the answer to this. Lawrence, as bad as plastic is, has glass ever been an issue in our waters, or has it had an adverse effect to our fisheries?
My kids grew up along the coast of Cape Breton, and they spent a lot of their spare time collecting what they call sea glass. And it's just fragments of broken bottles along the coastline that gets broken up by the rocks, and then the rocks sort of wear off the edges, and it becomes real smooth chunks about the size of your fingernail, and all different colors and shapes, but it's all smooth, and you can make jewelry out of it, and I don't think it becomes an issue. I don't think it has ever become a problem in terms of glass. The manufacturing glass, it's a lot of heat, energy to go into it. But I don't know if glass itself has ever been a problem.
I don't think to the extent that plastic is when it comes to, the micro problem that is faced by plastic breaking down. I think an interesting, and I want to say it was on Discovery, they were talking about microplastics from this island of plastic that is in the Pacific Ocean. And every time the currents change or there's a bad storm, most likely a hurricane, that lift that you have in the atmosphere, those microplastics are now because they're so micro, they're almost weightless. And you know what? That upwards building of cumulus clouds, that is what storms come from.
Yeah.
They're collecting those microplastics within the clouds. And when they move on land, we are now spreading that plastic all over the land. So it's not just a problem from the sea. It's a problem now coming from the sea to land. So at the end of the day, we're going to be inundated now with this plastic. And it is an issue that hopefully will get better, because I hope it can't get worse.
Yeah. We're making plastic faster and faster every year, more and more every year. It's not diminishing our plastic production. It's increasing every year because it's just so damn handy. And
it is, yeah.
But like I said, it's the plastic that's going into a car. The plastic that it's our long-term use kind of plastic. That's one thing. But it's this one-time use plastic that we need to think twice about. We have to end our relationship with one-time use plastic. That's the beginning, and that's the main part, because that's the stuff that flies out the windows and flies out of garbage cans, and it's just a mess. Every time a garbage can tips over, a recycling bin tips over, and it just all takes off. And I don't know why people just leave their plastic water bottles along the shoreline when they're fishing it. As a carp angler, I walk through a lot of long grass on shorelines, and when I'm just hearing under my feet crunch, 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 every step, crunch, crunch.
Well, I think I shared with you guys too. Every once in a while when I was driving up for the NOWT, I'd have to pull over to the side of the road and relieve myself, and I would look down in the ditch line, and I was just amazed. I was absolutely stunned. Areas just north of Sudbury, and I'm not talking that far. Maybe 20 minutes, half hour out of Sudbury, and you look down on the ditch line, and these friggin' things are everywhere. Those water bottles are everywhere. It's almost like they're stacked up on top of one another. And it's like, does anybody throw it in the garbage, or we just constantly throw it out the window? Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. It's just beyond belief.
And Jeremy, I'm not 100% sure I understand the question you're asking, but would it be more beneficial, since we are going to more electric style of everything, since the plastic industry is also tied to oil? I guess what they talk about in the video, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Jeremy, is of course now we're getting into hemp products that biodegrade. Obviously, we have food containers now that are made out of food product. So they're doing their best to try and create resolve. But at the end of the day, we all know if it's going to affect the top end and the overall profitability of a company, it's not going to happen. So we need.
Well, remember, biodegradable plastic is plastic that's mixed with sort of cornstarch, right? So the corn, it biodegrades, dissolves when the sun hits it, and then the little plastic particles are released, and to the eye, the plastic it disappears, but it doesn't. It just becomes microplastic.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as biodegradable plastic.
No. But those new food products, like you see, I see, for instance, forks, spoons, and knives, that you get for a cookout, a fish fry, whatever. Maybe you're going on a picnic. They were always typically made out of plastic. I'm now starting to see them made out of wood.
They're not cheap.
Great alternative. And a cheap alternative.
No, they're not cheap. I don't know, like the cost of manufacturing those things, and they're one use too. I'm thinking, that's probably just.
Well, at least you can burn it down to carbon. It can turn into ash. At least there's ways to deal with it better than there is plastic.
Like I was at the science symposium. There was 150 of us there. The lunch, they had real dishes and real knives and forks, and they didn't do the paper plates and the plastic forks and knives, right? They just spent a little bit more and avoided that. So we just have to look at that our linkage between these one-use plastics and try to end that. And I think young people that are carrying around, refillable water bottles, man, hey, that's the answer. And that's what they had at the conference too. They just had water stations, and they told you bring your own water bottles, and you're not putting out cups, and just you can fill them up.
Very cool. Yeah. Now, I know you have a couple news items that you want to share as well. You were at a conference just recently, and of course, there was some great discussion there.
Yeah, I just a few notes that from some of the presentations. So for you in the Great Lakes lovers, there's, they identified 43 areas of concern on the American, Canadian, and shared boundaries of the Great Lakes. 43 areas of concern where there was heavy industrial pollution that went in the Great Lakes, like things like Hamilton Harbor, the shore Cornwall, where the giant pulp and paper mill was. And they're cleaning them up. The remedial action plan was developed 30 years ago to clean up these areas of concern. It all takes money, it takes time, and we're slowly ticking them off the list. And the environmentalists say, hang on, you clean it up, but you can't just say, okay, it's gone. You have to monitor it now, because is it really gone? Like Hamilton Harbor, a big part of that was they put in concrete to just push the toxic mud into the ground and cover it over with concrete, because they thought digging it out would release it all into the lake again, into the water system, and they thought this was the least of two evils, was to cover it with concrete in the bay. So you have to monitor this stuff. It's never going to go away, but it is happening. The federal governments, American, Canadian governments are paying for this, and it's been going on every year. And good thing, like, are we getting ahead of it? Are we getting ahead? And then you hear about microplastics, and you hear about PFAS chemicals and things like that being dumped into the lakes, and you think, oh my God, we're just cleaning up here, and now we got crap coming up over there. So have we learned? Are we learning? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We can't not stop doing this. We have to keep it up.
It's funny you talk about Hamilton Harbor. So there was an EA study that was done back in the 90s. Yeah. And I was working with a gentleman whose father was a part of that EA study, discussing how they were going to dig up all of that toxic sediment that is in the harbor. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, at the end of it, the finding was that because of how deep the sediment goes, churning it up as they were going to be digging it, as it would filter through the rest of the lake, there was the potential that it could possibly kill off everything
Toxic bomb, just a toxic bomb. It's like stirring a can of paint, right? You know, when the paint separates and everything goes to the bottom of the can, you go in there with a wood stick and start stirring it around. That's what it would be like. Absolutely.
Hard to believe that there's that much of it, but let's be honest. I mean, that steel factory's been there for a number of years, and leave it. Absolutely, Steve. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Yeah. So mercury in the fish in the Great Lakes has plateaued. It's not. Yeah, it hasn't stopped. It's not increasing, but it's not necessarily being eliminated. And we're wondering why is these different types of mercury, like there's methyl mercury and there's organic mercury, and some of it bioaccumulates. It doesn't dissolve. Some of the stuff, like when the mercury that comes out of tree stumps and branches and stuff like that, when you flood a lake, when they make a big hydro dam, for about 10 years, there's super high levels of mercury because of all the wood that's decomposing underwater, and it releases the natural mercury that the wood holds. But it does eventually, it eventually gets trapped or breaks down, and it's gone after about 10 years. But there's other mercury that doesn't, and that's the stuff that'll accumulate in our systems and, mess with our minds, mess with our nervous systems, and eventually kill us. So it's still around. It's still around.
It is. And I did meet the angler. He is part of the NOWT, Jason Doyen, who was featured in an article that talked about mercury poisoning. And it was a featured, tournament angler, enthusiast. So yeah, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jason.
You did, eh?
Yeah, in regards to that. And
he ended up in the hospital, didn't he?
Well, he actually, to be quite honest with you, Lawrence, we're actually lucky to still have him with us.
Yeah.
His poisoning got so intense that they weren't sure he was going to make it.
Yeah. I heard like he was eating 3 or 4 meals of walleye a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in Northern Ontario, right?
Yeah.
Well,
the area that he would frequent, because he's from that area, is close to Wawa. Like some of the fish that were caught on Duberville, for instance, they have the highest levels of mercury, I think, in I don't know about Canada, but definitely the province. And a lot of it they attributed to what you are saying about the lumber at the bottom of the river system, that its decay is attributing to those high levels of mercury. And a lot of the catch that he had, he would take home from some of these tournaments, and he would eat, as you said, just because he was on the road so much and constantly out tournament fishing, pre-fishing, what have you, that it became a part of his diet. And it led, unfortunately, where he basically ate fish every day of the week for 2 weeks straight. And it, oh man, I tell you, he talks about it, and it's a wonder he's still with us. It really is. It was bad. Anyway,
okay, let's hear another one. So here's something: chain of contamination. The scientists are on this. Look, I tell you, this River Institute, and this is the 31st year for this science symposium. 31st year they've been doing it, and I remember, I think it was 10 years ago, I had Dr. Bruce Tufts and Dr. Stephen Cook, and a few fishing guides and a couple other scientists, and we just spent I organized a whole half day of just fish health, because I was concerned that they never talked about fish health. They never talked about the fish, right, at the symposium. And now everyone's doing fish, everything, fish. There's this love affair for fish. I'm not talking, like don't eat the fish. I'm talking about take care of the fish. Like we got to make sure the fish are healthy and that they're safe to eat, both, that they're healthy and safe to eat. So here's a problem. The zebra mussels filter about 1.5 liters of water a day. And when they filter the water, they're taking, not only the things the nutrients to make them grow, but they're also taking the chemicals out of the water, and it's bioaccumulating inside these little zebra mussels. The gobies come along and eat the small zebra mussels, and then they bioaccumulate the toxicities that from the zebra mussels into their bodies. And then who eats the gobies? And who eats the fish that eat the gobies, right? So we've got this chain of effect here. brought about by these invasive species. And you think, well, how big of a problem can it be? Well, when you watch those videos on TVO and you see the bottom of the Great Lakes that are just covered with nothing but mussels, quagga mussels and zebra mussels in the shallow areas. And you think, oh my God, that's what these things have had to turn to for food. And then our native fish species have had to turn to eat the gobies for food. It's a problem, right? This is a problem that needs to be understood. Like, how's that affecting the top of the food chain, the predatory fishes, their life? What's that meaning for them? And what's it meaning for us who eat those fish?
It's so true, and I'm happy to hear that mercury is, to a certain degree, has plateaued. I don't know if it's plateaued because there's more fish in the Great Lakes now than ever before to spread that mercury out, and maybe that has something to do with it. So I'd be interested to read more about that.
Well, they know it's not. They're not putting it into the Great Lakes, but they wonder, why doesn't it just keep going down? Why doesn't the levels of mercury in the Great Lakes just keep going down? And it's not. It's stopped going down.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's questions, but I tell you, there's a lot of scientists getting research money to start to look at these questions and find answers. And there's hope there, because once you find answers and it's in a research report, peer reviewed, at some point, politicians and us who elect those politicians, we can't ignore that anymore. We have to say, okay, we need to do something about that. Like, get the lead out of the pipes, get the mercury and the toxins out of the Great Lakes. We got to do something about it. It's going to cost some money, but over time we can do it. We can get the job done.
And Jeremy, you're 100% right. Jeremy's asking, could it be natural mercury, or is this mass-produced mercury? And I would have to say that I don't know that
it's man-made mercury, because it's bioaccumulating. Yeah, it's bioaccumulating. And the natural occurring mercury doesn't bioaccumulate because it will break down over 10 years. So it does break down, but this is not the kind of mercury that breaks down.
See, this is why we have you guys on here each and every week to do this. Lawrence, I'm sure you have more news items that you want to share. We will look forward to hearing those next week, because we have. I'm amazed at how time flies with you. It's just, we get to that 2-hour mark, and I'm like, where did the last 2 hours go? It's amazing how fast.
And we got Jason. I don't want to take Jason's time away, but let's get Jason on, man. I enjoy listening to him too.
Right on. Well, listen, Lawrence, as always, thanks for all you do. And for anyone who wants to hear some of the past podcasts, interviews, what have you, Lawrence has talked to a lot of very influential people, interesting entertainers, you name it. And of course, they are available over on Bluefish Radio. So I invite you to go over there and have a boot at the library of interviews that this man has done.
Their Bluefish Radio show. You got it, buddy. Thank you.
Hey, buddy, you have yourself a great week. And again, thanks for all you do, my friend.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Thank you.
Right on. Jay Barnucz up right after a word from his sponsor.
Want to know the difference between power bait and other soft plastics? Ask the fish. Berkeley scientists have thousands of flavors tested on thousands of fish. Natural, man-made. Every bait that's ever hit the water. No matter the shape, size, or color, power bait is the only one that is scientifically proven. Fish bite and will not let go.
Jay Dog's in the house. How you doing, Jay?
Good. How are you doing, Scotty?
Good, my friend. Well, I have to ask, as we started each of the segments with sharing your passion, as we all do have a passion for angling. I'd love to know what Jay Barnucz loves outside of fishing. What do you love to do other than fish?
Dude, I think George Morgan hit it. I get to do what I want to do for a living. Fishing, it just kind of fills the void in between not doing fisheries work. So I'm one of the lucky ones, man. Living the dream, literally.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you, no one lives it better, my friend, and I'm so thankful that you share it and what you've passed on to Trevor and of course Steph. Again, kudos to you, my friend. It's working. Whatever you're doing, it's working.
Yeah, I'm not getting any younger, so the work's not getting any easier, I guess. But it's I love it, man. I love it. So
I got to ask you a question. There was a video that
Yeah.
Mark Zona shared, and we talked about water temperatures in Jim's segment. This was an interesting thing that he brought up, and I don't know if it happens up here. We'll watch the video, and then I'll get your take on it.
So I've actually shot shows about this time of year. If you look right there and right there, it actually happens when our water temps start getting back down near in the 60s, where fish will actually come back up. Males confused by the water temps. Little bluegill out there. Hey, little buddy. I've definitely seen that. We shot a show 3 weeks ago way up north where we saw smallmouth making beds, big males, thinking it was time to do their thing. But anyway, that's what they look like. Those, again, were not there when I left town last week.
Is this a thing?
I saw that clip, and I also listened to Mark talk on a podcast about he actually brought it up because of the recent Hunter's Moon that came up, and how there's a lot of thought that spawning bass relate to water temperature and moon phase in the spring season. There's not a lot of strong evidence that suggests moon phase is a driver, but Zona believes it's a big deal. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of data on this sort of false fall spawning. I can tell you that I see what I think are old spawning beds that still look pretty clean in some lakes. I know up on Mississippi Lake this past September. So like we were there during a full moon. I didn't see any fish on them it was about, I think it was the same week I saw that clip and or heard Mark talking on a podcast. So that was the third week of September, Scotty. So a month ago. Yeah. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. I can't say Mark's right or wrong. I don't know. So
it's an interesting thing that obviously, I relate it back to work. We have an explosive limit when it comes to natural gas, and everybody gets concerned when we get close to that limit. I get just as concerned when we surpass the limit and we're venting a house and we're coming back down. And I thought of that, like when Mark mentioned it, I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense because eventually, in the spring we have that warm up, and then we have that cool down. What's the difference?
Yeah, I you'd think the males though, like, so my first thought on how should I put this properly? When fish reproduce, they put an investment out, right? They have to invest, and it's at a cost, an energy cost that goes out to spawn, to breed, and it's a risk to them. By putting out that energy, they could be hurting themselves. So even Mark says about male bass doing it, but even the males putting out that energy as we're getting close to winter, there's no ecological or biological evidence or reason to do that in the fall. So because fish have to expend that energy even to dig those nests, it doesn't really make biological sense to have fall spawning bass, because one of the biggest bottlenecks for bass, and actually for a lot of our fish that are hatched in the spring. So we can talk about walleye, bluegill, crappie, largemouth, smallmouth, pike, muskie. The biggest bottleneck, do you know what it is, Scotty? What's the biggest bottleneck for these fish in survivorship? What's the biggest bottleneck?
Well, it has to be the spawn.
No, what's the biggest bottleneck is we're coming into it right now, winter. That's the number one killer of young fish, is in northern latitudes. The health of a population is often based around winter survivorship in the first year. So if we have a good growth period through the summer and they fatten up, then they have to survive that first winter. That first winter really dictates their survival through that first winter really dictates that population health going forward every year.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
George just said any male bass that tries to spawn in the fall would die over winter due to depleted energies, or that's it. Like,
there you go.
It doesn't make biological sense for them to do it. Like, if they were doing, not saying they couldn't go dig a nest in October, but they're probably setting themselves up like they're burning energy they should not be burning, and they've been evolving that way for like hundreds of, like tens of thousands of years for sure. So yeah,
interesting topic. And of course, yeah, as I said, when it comes to walleye, I guess I'm not that in tune to how adverse the effect is that winter has on fish, because as we know, walleye continue to feed as if it's summer.
but their metabolism slows down. So basically, how big they get by winter, and we're not talking like Scotty, we're not talking like adult walleye. We're talking the little guys, right? So they need their food stores and their food resources are very unique. Like, we're not talking big walleye roaming around feeding on perch. We're talking little walleye that are a few inches long. What are they going to eat all winter, right? And they're only so big. Like, there's only so much energy like if you have, I don't have an example here, but dude, you have a fish this big, right? That's this fat by winter, that has that much energy stored. And you have a fish this big. This fish is going to have a harder time than this fish. Just has more energy stored. So small fish just don't grow big enough, and so they have a tougher time through the winter. Like, a lot of those small walleye, even by fall, they're probably on a fish diet, but there's not a lot of small fish around in the fall, because that's the small fish they're feeding on are probably small prey fish, and also those fish struggle through the winter, right? So all those tiny fish struggle to make it through to the spring. That's
this is why we have you guys on, man. I tell you, that's I've never looked at it like that. So yeah, geez, makes perfect sense.
It's the biggest bottleneck for northern fisheries, and this is why climate change is interesting, because we are actually creating, as water temperatures warm on average, species like bass will do much better. Species like walleye, like, they might not do as well in some of those southern latitudes, where like some of those southern locations, and other species like brook trout, they might just be completely pushed out of areas just because of the average. And we're talking just a few degrees of water temperature, but on average every year, that can make a big difference. We could be looking at some great bass fishing in 25, 50 years, but some of the walleye fishing might not be so good. And some of the trout fishing could be gone in some areas. So,
interesting.
Right?
Wow.
Yep.
Good stuff. Now, I don't know where you want to go first. Did you want to share?
I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and share something here, Scotty. And I want to see if this is going to work.
Okay.
And is that working?
It is.
Okay. So I don't even know if this will show up on a full screen. No, I won't do that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of walk you through. This is just some slides that I kind of put together. So there's a new invasive species that's come up in Ontario last month. There was some news broadcasts, and unfortunately, because of Facebook, we can't share these things in Canada, but we won't worry about that right now. I'm going to walk you through what I know. This is hydrilla. Okay, so hydrilla is an aquatic plant. It's very common throughout the United States. You'll see pictures like this. We talked about this event last year or this summer. This is Jordan Lee frog fishing in the Kissimmee chain of Florida.
Yeah,
he's fishing a frog over dense hydrilla mats, and this is what hydrilla looks like. It's very similar to some of our native plants. It looks like Canada waterweed, which is a plant, but Canada waterweed doesn't grow dense like this, but hydrilla does. And yeah, it creates great habitat for fish, but sometimes too much of a good thing is bad. Does that make sense, Scotty?
It does. Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
So this is what hydrilla does. It literally chokes out waterways. Like, the top right picture is a picture from Mississippi. The middle picture is actually a picture from Connecticut. And the picture on the left is a picture from Florida. This is all hydrilla. Hydrilla has spread across all of the U.S. for the most part, not so much all of it, mostly in the eastern U.S., but it's also spread out. It's also found in the California Delta and a lot of the like Clear Lake and some of these famous fisheries out on the West Coast too. And it spreads by fragmentation. So you cut it up, it'll grow. It spreads by roots, spreads by seeds. It's just an incredibly well-evolved plant to do what it wants. And the trouble is that when you get these instances here, even though it might still provide fish habitat, we run into conflicts with land or with other user groups, right? So boaters, dude, you can't boat through that.
Yeah.
So then you get into having to treat it, right? So I'm going to jump ahead here. So some of the treatments are, and believe it or not, spraying is one that's often used. That's the bottom corner. You have mechanical treatment, which is a harvester on that right side. And even I read some papers recently where they were using grass carp in large ponds, small lakes to manage hydrilla to improve the bass population in Texas. Jeez. So we don't want to have to. And we talked in the pre-show about all these plant species that are showing up, water soldier in Lake Simcoe, hydrilla, and where is this coming out of this whole conversation is it was found in Hillman Marsh. So Hillman Marsh is right here where my little cursor is. So this is Point Pelee, this is Windsor, Detroit, and this is Hillman Marsh. It's a popular duck hunting location right on the waters of Lake Erie. I've actually done lots of surveys there in my career. We see lots of species. It's a popular location for a lot of fish diversity. So like you'll see buffalo, quillback. There's also goldfish and carp, different bullheads. It's one of those spots, and I know that even in the CFN Fish Shop, Scotty, Hillman Marsh is one of the regular places. That whole Essex County is popular for a lot of different species.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm not surprised that it showed up there. What I think has happened, it probably came in from a boat transfer. I know Hillman Marsh is popular for duck hunting. And so if you search up hydrilla on online, and I'm going to post a link in the chat here. This is the Invasive Species Center, which on Lawrence's segments we've talked about and heard of before. And this is a press release that came out of Hillman Marsh. Why I'm bringing this attention tonight is not just because it's an invasive species and an potential issue. This attracted a lot of attention to the point where I listened to a podcast on the weekend while I was fishing. And because when I'm in the kayak, some days I just stick the phone in my pocket and I listen to podcasts when I'm working my way around the lake. The state of Michigan actually got very much involved. And the state of Michigan brought resources to help Ontario do some investigation in Hillman Marsh. It was a very cool story to hear how all these different agencies, including Michigan, now Hillman Marsh doesn't even border Michigan. Like Michigan is, Michigan's way over here. But the state of Michigan saw this as a threat because they don't have a lot of hydrilla in Michigan. And they said, how can we help? And the state of Michigan came in. So the province of Ontario got involved. The state of Michigan got involved. Federal government got involved. And Hillman Marsh is owned by the Essex Region Conservation Authority. So they're actively involved. University of Waterloo is involved right now because they don't want anything coming and going out of Hillman Marsh because of the threat of transferring this highly invasive aquatic plant to other areas. We have a national park down here, just literally a few kilometers down the shoreline that is open to the lake. And so the hydrilla could, in theory, just drift into Pelee National Park, which is one of our crown jewels of Southern Canada, right? Point Pelee National Park. So
100%. Now, we are concerned, obviously, with most invasive species like that dreaded carp that is finding its way up the Mississippi River. With that being said, and I think you touched on it, how it possibly got there. Water flows down the Mississippi. So I'm curious, how concerned should we be that this might migrate naturally. Obviously, we know that anglers and boaters and whatever
Yeah.
are the number one culprit for spreading these invasive species. But
So I think if it does get established in Hillman Marsh, and Hillman Marsh is open to Lake Erie, so pieces of it literally could float into Lake Erie and float away. Okay, and they could think about all the coastal areas along Lake Erie that would provide habitat for hydrilla.
Yeah,
Point Pelee, Rondo Bay, Long Point Bay, the mouth of the Grand River, all the river mouths along Lake Erie, and not just on that's just the Ontario side.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind the U.S. side. You have Sandusky Bay, Presqu'île over by Erie, Pennsylvania. All of those river mouths have some sort of wetland complex at the mouth that could probably sustain. Now, this fish is native. It's more native to the southern U.S., like in this map. But you can see there's populations. We have populations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan. So it's persisting in these places. Maybe not spreading a lot, but it's persisting. And the fact is, we just don't want these invasive species here because we just talked about. You heard Lawrence talking about mercury levels, right? Well, there's been research done on why the mercury levels aren't dropping. A lot of it's believed to be because of invasive species, Scotty.
Really?
I'll explain why. The invasive species keep messing with the food web. So these levels aren't dropping. The food web is just a mass of energy, right? And so the mercury just keeps getting repositioned in the food web.
Okay.
It doesn't actually leave because every time we add new things to the food web, like zebra mussels, like round goby, like the list goes on. You keep messing with the food web. The mercury, mercury is an element, right? You just can't get rid of it. But the levels should be dropping. But the reality is that because the food web keeps changing, one of the theories is you can't get rid of mercury until the food web stabilizes. But the food web won't stabilize because as the more invasive species come in, the food web keeps changing.
You're just spreading it around. Yeah.
You're just moving it around. Ecologically, you're moving it around, right?
100%. Now, we did talk about it before we went live in regards to does this invasive plant suffocate itself? So as it suffocates other types of plants and they disappear, will this eventually kill itself?
So what I've read is it won't do that to itself. The challenge, though, is that it does provide some habitat for bass. Like you can see that picture. Like
sure,
it's you've often heard the term, and our friend Dave Mercer has said the term before, hydrilla gorilla. Right, everyone who's a bass fisherman has heard that term. So we don't want, like in a lot of these places, and hydrilla is native in some of these places. It just gets out of hand. And so there's been some great articles on bassmaster.com over the years where Gene Gilliland, the conservation director for bass, has discussed we have to find balance in managing hydrilla, which I do agree with. I think that like in Lake Okeechobee, where they're just massively using herbicides to kill this stuff off, to open up areas to boating, that may not be the best approach either, because all of that material, when it's killed, that just becomes toxic on the bottom to everything, right? So it's kind of like, I want to, what's the term we used to use? Like, sustainable development. So you want to like do things in a sustainable way so that you don't just kill everything off. Right. But unfortunately, sometimes homeowners associations, cottage associations win. Hydrilla will smother these places though if it's not controlled in some way. So, some people, but it gets so bad though, Scotty, that sometimes it takes drastic measures to fix these things, right? So.
And can it at all be hindered or controlled from Mother Nature? Like, in other words, we've had some fairly warm winters, haven't had a lot of ice cover on a lot of our lakes. Does that, keep it down? Will that contain it at all?
No. So here's the thing that I read about it is that in a lot of places where it's bad, humans are the reason why it's getting worse. So the reason why it's getting worse is eutrophication. So as you're getting more phosphorus and more chemicals in these lakes, like let's talk about bad septic beds, right, on a cottage lake. As you're getting cottage lakes becoming more eutrophied, eutrophied is just a fancy name for more nutrients in the lake.
Yep.
As lakes get more eutrophied, plants like hydrilla do really well. And then they get to a point where they do so well that it's too much of a good thing, right? And so if our lakes weren't becoming more eutrophied, we wouldn't possibly see so much plant growth. But the plant growth you're seeing here in the Kissimmee chain, one of the challenges in the Kissimmee chain of Florida is too much nutrients coming in, and it's causing it to bloom. So, and George, I agree. I'm sure that's being considered. So, when we get talking about how we respond to invasive species, and possibly the one method would be to go and, basically kill it off as fast as possible. Even at the demise of that local wetland, you might want to try and it seems drastic, but that might be the only way to react. And in some cases, this has happened across the US with invasive species, is they're a little more easy to pull the trigger down there on some of these things. And I think it's something that's worth exploring. So I'm sure it's been discussed.
Wow. Well,
yeah, Joe, fertilizer too. Fertilizer, septic beds, all these things contribute more phosphorus and more nutrients. I'll just say nutrients because phosphorus is just one. More nutrients to these systems. Yeah.
Obviously blue-green algae is something that we're familiar with. I don't know how prevalent it was or I know how prevalent it is down in Florida.
Yeah.
I don't know how prevalent it was back in the 80s, 70s, 90s. With the amount of fertilizer nutrients that's being dumped in the river systems and water bodies down in Florida, but you're starting to see it congregate in concentration more frequently now than ever before down in Florida.
Well, and what's happened, like for Lake Erie, for example, Scotty, with the blue-green algae issues, it used to be more. So let's say it was because of back in the 70s, it was mostly point source pollution. So coming out of the pipe. So there's two types of pollution. There's point source and non-point source. Point source is a pipe, like a culvert, like a sewage outflow. Okay. So back in the 70s, we changed how we did things. Industry changed. We took a lot of the phosphorus out of detergents, as an example. And we really helped to decrease those nutrients entering Lake Erie at the pipe. Right? Out of our homes, less phosphorus. We made adjustments in the industry. Let's go over to what's going on now. Why are we seeing more algae blooms now? Well, the big thing is that we're seeing a lot more intensive agriculture happening around Lake Erie. There's a lot, and I'm not pointing the finger at any one group, but there's a lot more intensive agriculture with a lot of chemical use, and that's working its way into the lakes through what's called non-point source pollution. Non-point source pollution is overland flow. So when you have overland flow, it's hard to point the finger at anyone because where's it coming from, right? There could be in a stream flowing into Lake Erie, there could be 40 farms. And there could be pig farms, corn farms, wheat farms, soybean farms, and they're all contributing probably some way to this. How do we manage that? And that's the big challenge that we're going to have as agencies, I guess. The agencies will have to figure out, how do we manage this, and it's easy to stop the issues when it's a pipe flowing in a specific direction from a specific source. Now you have non-point source, so
great topic, great point.
Yeah,
great information, and definitely concerning, because as we become chemists, and we start to change the compounds of these fertilizer, growth hormones and what have you. I guess anything's possible when it comes to what it's going to look like in the future, due to this, change, if you will, and this tinkering that we're doing with some of these finite compounds. So concerning, alarming, and I'm glad we're talking about it.
Before I let you go, I got a good news story I want to share with you.
Well, we got the video too. Did you want to share the video at all?
No, we don't have to share the video. That's okay. We don't have to share the video. But I'm I want it because I want to talk about something good before we shine off, because it's 9:00, and I'm going to share a picture with you, Scotty, that a few people have sent this to me, and I've been following this already, and I love the fact that CFNers out there. I know Sonia's on tonight. She sent me a copy of this. So this is a picture that I'm going to share tonight. It's a flyer. So this is called Netting the Waters. Netting the Waters is a local studio, Rosalie Studio. And when you live in Simcoe and in Norfolk area, Rosalie used to do all the school pictures. We actually just hired Rosalie to do our family photos with my mom and my grandmother and my sister's kids' families. They did a documentary called Netting the Waters. So this is showcasing the history of commercial fishing on Lake Erie. And as much as I know the commercial fishing can be controversial, Scotty, it's a cool history as part of the Great Lakes legend and lore. And they actually had such good turnouts at their first couple screenings, is now they have a bunch more screenings that are going to happen. And you can only see it at the theater in Simcoe. So I'm going to post the, where's the Facebook link here? They actually have to the Rosalie Studio page, and I'm going to post it in our chat.
Interesting.
And, yeah. So it's a really cool documentary. I think that everyone should, I'll zoom back out. I hope they actually, I'm sure at some point they'll make it, available online somewhere to look at. But right now it's only for sort of like semi-private screenings of it. Right. So I'm going to try and go. I want to go see it. And I wasn't just thinking about Port Dover, where this is probably mostly filmed, but all those little fishing towns along Lake Erie that used to have fishing boats, right, Scotty? Like, geez, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to go. I'll go from west to east, like Kingsville and Wheatley and, Port Bruce. Port Burwell used to have fishing trawlers. Port Dover, Port Maitland, Port Colborne, like all those places, right? Yep. So huge part of our history, huge part of who we are in the Great Lakes region, and not just Lake Erie. There's commercial fishermen all over the Great Lakes. And I think that this video is going to give people a great insight into just Great Lakes commercial fishing. So kudos to the Rosalie Studio for taking that on. Collingwood, yeah, like Joe, every time I travel, I like to go. Like I was up in Lake Superior a few years ago on the South Shore in Michigan on the Upper Peninsula. I bought some smoked whitefish from one of the commercial operators. Like I love that stuff. And I love visiting the old trawlers. And in fact, when I go out east now, every time I go out east, I just love visiting the fishing ports and talking to the commercial anglers. So anyways, I wanted to share that tonight with the CFN group.
Let me know the day you're going down, Jay, especially if it's on a weekend. Yeah. I will try and join you because I find that absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And a must see. I'd love to see that.
Let's do that because I think Heather and the kids want to go too. So right I'll look at those dates, and it'll be a weekend for me too because I'm not doing a weeknight. Between the commute to work in the morning and back at night, 9 p.m. is la time for me soon. So it's yeah,
I hear you. Now, before you go too, I do have to ask because, of course, you are a multi-species angler, and whether it's you driving Trevor driving you, what have you, you guys, this is your time. You love the fall because of the migration of fish. What is your species of choice that's upcoming?
Oh, geez, that's a good question because everything's such in transition right now. We were out yesterday, and the lake is literally right at 50 degrees. Like literally, like. Things are just starting to flip right now. Like things are setting up for fall. We've gone through such a fast transition in water temperature. Like it seems like in a little over a week, we went from like 60 to 50, like that. Even with these warm days, the nights have been cool. We're getting down around, like we're getting frost down here. George, even down here, the bananas are getting frost on them. Okay. So I know you guys up in the North Bay, Nipissing area, but down here we actually are getting some cooler temperatures. So, but there's so many things that aren't working in our favor, Scotty. There's no rain. All the rivers are super low. So we're like kind of planning, and kayak fishing has kind of come to an end. Water temperatures right now are right around like 50. Like we had some temperatures yesterday around 48. That's getting cold. And for us around here, it's all big water fishing, right? Inner Bay at Long Point, Lake Erie. And dude, something happens when it's 70, whatever. But we're talking 48, 47. Yeah, and you know, we're pretty far offshore just to find fishable water, because guys may not know this, but right now, this time of year, the water's at its like lowest for the year. Like we go down to Long Point, and we used to be 4 feet of water is now 2 feet of water. And so we have to go out even further to find fishable water. It's just not working in our favor. Trevor got a nice pike yesterday in the boat canals, but in Long Point, but we're probably going to try some crappie fishing. I've heard of a great fall crappie bite, Scotty.
Nice.
We've never targeted them in the fall. And I think that's what we're going to experiment with that the next couple of weeks while we wait for some rain. Yeah. So we'll see. Like, dude, this is like that, you know, that time between in the spring when the ice is crap and trout opener, right? There's about, sometimes that period's 2 weeks. Sometimes that period is like 6 weeks or 8 weeks long. We're in that transition right now. So, and I want all CFNers, though, when they go to bed tonight, to pray to the La Nina gods, because we need some cold winter weather. I am ready for cold. I don't even think I ice fished once last year. Time to go ice fishing. Call it what it is. And I love my steelheading. I hope we get some rain, but I'm looking forward to a cold winter. Like, let's just get it going. So
amen to that. Amen to that. Great way to end it, Jay. As
All
always,
right.
dude, thanks so much for all you bring. And that it is as alarming as it is about the hydrilla. It's a good reminder that, as George mentioned, it is the law. Clean off your trailers, clean off your boats.
Yep.
Make sure you're not dragging any of that grass, hydrilla, or anything else for that matter around.
Yeah, when you pull that trailer out of the water, and if it's covered in, you know, slop from the channel, if you don't clean it off, you're breaking the law now. Like, so be aware of that. That is a real problem. So thanks, guys.
Right on, dude. Appreciate it, my friend. You take care of yourself, Jay.
Yeah.
Peace. That is our show. Thanks to all of you who joined us. Thanks for our incredible featured guests, Jim, Lawrence, and of course Jay. Bring a wealth of information. And guys, we do this every week. We try to entertain you as best we can. We're trying to entertain the masses. So if you know people out there that are looking to bulk up, become more informed, point them in this direction, because I'll tell you right now, those three, I don't think you'll find three more educated anglers within our industry, within our community, that can offer up the kind of stuff that they do on a weekly basis. I think that is a true testament to the wealth of knowledge that they have, that they're able to come here each and every week and provide our CFN community a wealth of information. I hope all of you get out, even though it is in transition, as Jay mentioned. You do get out for that last fish. Yeah, I saw one in the comments here that it might be the last time. Yep, could be the last time you get out in the boat tomorrow. So if you are out and about making plans, I hope it's successful. I hope you get out and enjoy some beautiful time on the water while the weather is still good. And then let's hope that the thermometer plummets, as they say, hardens up a lot of this fresh water, and it gives us the hard water season that we have been yearning for a few years now. Let's just say that. In the meantime, you guys stay healthy, stay safe, stay classy, and stay tuned, because there's lots going on in CFN, and we appreciate your support. With that, Dave, it's time to take us away. All the best, folks. Peace.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.